what better way to celebrate the best of Mario than with the worst of Mario? Hey, it's not the most disrespectful way I could have done it. I made a top 20 Mario bosses list 2 years ago, and I still stand by every single entry on that list regardless of what people think or say. But if that list is too spicy for you, you haven't seen shit yet. Bad Mario bosses aren't easy to measure, since you can always chalk up most of them to the Mario 1 Bowser fights. So to narrow down what qualifies as the worst boss in the series, I gotta level the standards up a bit. How bad is the boss compared to other bosses in the game? How bad is the fight compared to its variations in other games? It's one thing for the boss to be too easy or frustrating, but I'm also factoring in how boring or uninspired they can get. Like the previous list, only one game per entry, and the games must have Mario as the titular character. He doesn't even need to be playable in these fights, they just gotta be from the games that count. These are the top 10 worst Mario bosses. One of the stranger villains in Mario's catalog has to be the invader of Sarasara Land, Tatanga. He didn't leave that big of an impression other than being Daisy's abductor, but he was a unique and formidable adversary in Super Mario Land. And hey, he's not completely forgotten, since he did at least reappear again in Mario Land 2, where he's the easiest boss in the game. Now, if you look at this fight, you're probably thinking, how is he the easiest? Compared to bosses like the giant bird and the rat, at least he shoots projectiles at you. Yeah, he does. But you gotta realize that you're fighting him in space, so you can literally move anywhere to dodge his attacks. And even if you don't do that, his lower projectile won't collide with you, so you can just stand and wait until he slides towards you. And the instant Tatanga reaches under your heel, you can just hover over him and bump him 3 times in a row, knock him down in less than 10 seconds. Remember, this guy was the final boss of the first game, and yet here, he makes all the other simple bosses look batch in comparison. It's a pretty sloppy turnabout for the particularly rare Mario villain, which is why it's kind of a shame he doesn't appear more. Not much to show on his resume to justify being all that remarkable. Despite this, I do want to see him make a comeback somehow. Maybe as a cameo in a new Wario Land game? If Nintendo still makes those. What Super Paper Mario bosses lack in terms of challenge, they make up for it in creativity. Each chapter boss in the game always tries something wacky and interesting that keeps you on your toes. It helps that they're fairly interesting characters too. Mimi, Francis, Crocus, Mr. L, etc. But for all the gem that glitters, there's always that cold, dim stone. Despite being the guardian of hell who leads an army against heaven, Bonechill is pretty anticlimactic. We know nothing about him and he lacks any of the nuanced characterization the other bosses have. His only purpose is to reveal that Love Bee is a pure heart, and that's it. His boss fight? Pfft, he just breathes ice and shoots icicles. Yeah, that's it. The Guardian of Hell, and he doesn't even put up a commendable fight. It's a no-brainer that you can trivialize the whole battle by having Luigi smack him in the jaw a couple of times. It's pretty disappointing that we've come 7 chapters in only to be greeted by such a pathetic semi-final showdown, let alone one that's supposed to level the rulers of the afterlife. Fortunately, Bonechill doesn't ruin the chapter by any means. It's still a great chapter with some daunting emotional beats. You can forget the dead fish even happened, and it doesn't hurt a thing. Yup, to no one's surprise, Mega Goomba made it on the list. What might be surprising though is why is it only number 8? It's literally just a giant Goomba. Well, yeah, it's not a great boss at all, but I feel like it gets a bit more flack than it really deserves. The boss itself is meant to be a throwback to how Mario 3's World 4 has giant enemies, so I don't take too much issue with the idea itself, but it could definitely use a more unique design to stand out. The fight is as predictable as it gets, but I do like that you do have to switch on some platforms to reach the Goomba's head, lest you're proficient enough in wall kicking. Even if it's way too bare bones, I can see an attempt to make a fun fight happen here. If they had really gone all out like they did with Goombas in 64DS, this fight would have been so much better, maybe even amazing. As it is, it's a stale fight, but far from the absolute worst the series could put out. I think most people can agree that Sunshine's bosses are not a high point for the game. Questionable designs aside, these fights are often riddled with menial gimmicks that are more trouble than it's worth. Whether it's overwatering Petey, feeding peppers to King Boo, or fighting Bowser in his acid resort. But even that's not stupid enough somehow. No, let's have an entire battle dedicated to dental hygiene. The boss fight against Eely Mouth has you dive deep underwater and spray its teeth from above. If that concept isn't already as stupid as it sounds, let's look at the bucket list of things wrong with it. The eel can't stop gyrating, so you'll miss spraying the water without being able to aim properly. It sometimes retreats and sprays toxic bubbles at you, making the sequence even more tedious, and your only means to get air in this fight is to collide with one of its falling teeth. How and why is that supposed to make sense? The whole thing is just so slow and unnecessarily annoying. Maybe if you don't have to worry about air, the fight could have been less so. But even factoring that out, do you really want to call a boss fight where all you do is brush its teeth a good fight? If it plays well, maybe it could have been like WarioWare levels of fun. But no, this is apparently serious business. Why not resign from as soon as I called? I doubt even Scrivello will put up with this.
Goddamn sicko.
Mario Party boss minigames are always an interesting sight to behold. Even 9 and 10, for all the crap people gave them, has a plethora of good ones, whether they're traditional combat or puzzle and memory based. Finding a particularly bad boss minigame is a bit challenging since even the worst of these have some level of player control attached to it. But I think I did find one that really hits the bad design mark I was looking for. Bowser Jr. Breakdown. In Mario Party 9, you occasionally get to face Bowser Jr. in 1 vs 2 minigames. Outside of that, Jr. has his own personal boss fight. And guess what it's all about?
Brother, you gotta roll the dice.
Yep, it's your Cointagious and Toad in the Box all over again, but with even less player control somehow. The whole fight has you dice roll your way into dealing damage to Junior. You can only do so if you land on multiplies of 3. Don't get the exact number, you lose a turn, and other players can potentially steal your rolls and deal more damage. Some players can rack up so much damage that they can end with 20 points, while others get stuck at 0. Balance is overrated, am I right? I suppose in a more sandbox setting, this minigame can be fun to mess around with, the same way Bowser's Big Blast is enjoyable in a chaotic, luck-based way. But remember, this is a boss minigame, meaning you have to stay on top of it if you don't want to fall behind on a board, especially in solo mode. But the reason why it's also only this low is because it's Mario Party 9. The game hands out participation bonuses like oxygen. Still, a game having poor penalty balances doesn't excuse a fight being this counterintuitive. Dice rolling is just not a good way to break out a game where the main mechanic is dice rolling. Not sure if that's not obvious enough already. Bowser, King Koopa, arch nemesis of Mario and controversial precedent of— wait, didn't I already do this? For all the great Bowser fights, there are somehow just as many bad ones. Question is, which one do I pick? Is it one of the super easy press the switch and you win fights? Or the ones that make you ask, why? Well, as someone who's developing an eye for the passion of design and ideas, I'd like to factor in one that probably has the best chance at being amazing. No, this is not just me repenting from my past sins. I really do believe that this is the most liable candidate for the list. To begin with, Galaxy 2 has a lot to live up to, especially after the astronomical note the first game ended on. In that game, there's a whole sun-sized spectacle to behold. Edging closer to it as the battle goes on feels ever-growingly tense, and it all pays off with the freaking Big Bang. Here, the game really hypes up the final phase as you face off against Bowser above a massive void. Guess how that turned out?
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, just ground pound a few times and the fight is over in less than a minute. No extra phases to spice up the tension, this is all you get. Considering what it had to follow up to, this is really passé. Had there been just a little more going on, it would have been interesting. Maybe have a few asteroids to jump on to reach the shiny ones while Bowser breathes fire, or I don't know, shoot dark matter or summon a black hole? I know this is supposed to be a finishing lap, but it's not even good at that considering all you get afterwards is Peach saying thank you. Universe-ending supernova versus a thank you. You see what's wrong here? Considering how Nintendo's been treating Galaxy 2 recently, this might not have been a fond history for them to look back to. The most we can hope for is that they learned their lesson and will take their time to make these endgames hit their mark again. Thankfully, Odyssey's finale is so much better. Yes, that is one hill I will continue to die on, you can fight me over it all you want. Speaking of passé, good lord, I hate the Koopaling fights across the new Super Mario Bros. Games. They may not be the worst bosses in the series technically, but the fact that the games make you fight the same type of boss 35 times is downright inane. Yes, you could argue you throw Bowser down a lava pit more often, but even Bowser makes some attempt to evolve his boss fights with every coming game. The Koopalings? They're all the same shtick. Jump on them once, wait for them to stop spinning, immediately jump on them again before they can attack, rinse and repeat, and you win. Sure, some fights like Iggy and Ludwig do try different things, but even those get lazy rehashes. Look, Nintendo, just because Mario 3 did well for its time doesn't mean every single Mario game has to be Mario 3. You made a bad influence on Star Fox. Sure, you could say the bosses were never that big of a focus in these games since a lot of it is centered around multiplayer chaos. Well, to that, I raised New Super Mario Bros. 2, the mostly single-player handheld where the Koopaling fights are just watered-down version of their Wii fights. Without much chaotic multiplayer to hide the ugly coat of paint, nothing excuses the bosses from being the washouts that they are. For all the complaints people give to most Mario bosses with their hit 3 times and you win debacle, at least you don't fight just one type of them for an entire game. Could you imagine having King Boo as the only boss in a Mario game and you have to fight him like 7 times, all the while the fights only have one small change for each consecutive encounter? No one wants that. Honestly, I just don't find the Koopalings all that charming anymore. Even the whole thing about them being Bowser's kids got deconfirmed. They're not even at least adopted, just regular minions who refer to Bowser by name instead of dad like they used to. They are just as rigid and stale as every other cut corner Nintendo's been barbing about. All I'm saying is, if the Koopalings come back, they gotta be interesting character-wise or serve only as mini-bosses before some actual new and well-designed bosses. Otherwise, just let them go. We already got them in Mario Kart 8 and Smash Ultimate. I say they got just about every attention they needed at this rate. Up to this point, we've covered bosses that range from pathetic to tedious. Now we're getting into the real infuriating ones. Boss fights so painful, it's a wonder they even got past the green light. Starting with the most unlikely of places, a Mario and Luigi game. In Dream Team, you occasionally get a boss sequence where you fight as Giant Luigi. While these battles aren't as epic or atmospheric as the Giant Bowser fights in BIS, they still make for some pretty neat breakout fights. Even some frustrating ones like Z-Keeper, I didn't mind so much because it's such a creative and colorful fight. However, here's the thing about these giant fights. They're supposed to break out from the average boss battles to give us something new. By normalizing these fights, it completely beats the purpose of them being unique and fresh. That's why the giant battle ring is not what I would call a good idea. Refighting the giant bosses with no build-up just takes away the tension they had before. Now sure, maybe some people do want to refight these bosses again in a higher difficulty, in which case, that's totally fine. But you know what's not fine? Fighting all 5 of these slow, meticulous bosses in a row with limited turns and recovery. You have to perfectly hit and dodge every boss attack in a select amount of turns. Fail, and you have to start over from the very beginning. It's stupid hard and not in a good way at all. Not only do the fights put you through quick time events with very short reaction times, but you even gotta deal with the clunky ass gyroscope controls against Z-Keeper and Giant Bowser with every failure. Add having to repeat the same finisher every time, and Great Gadzooks is this gauntlet a chore. And what's your reward for completing it? 8,000 coins. Yeah, I'll stick with the regular boss rush, thank you. The Giant Luigi medley demonstrates why having too much of a good thing can be really bad. This gauntlet puts me off so much from giant battles that I'd rather not have another one altogether. Needless to say, I'm glad Paper Jam gave us something different. The Papercraft battles may not be perfect, but at least they gave me the freedom of movement to strategize any way I want. I know BISDX is a giant battle medley as well, but I think it's best I stay the hell away from that one. I'd like to cherish at least some good memories left. Mario Pinball Land is not a good game by any stretch. While it's chock full of adventure-style content, the game controls way too sporadically that every segment always feels unnecessarily difficult. That said, I have to admit it's a very charming game. Charming enough that I'd even consider it a guilty pleasure personally. No way am I excusing how stupidly convoluted this game gets though. You wanna know how to get to the second boss of the game? You have to go to the ice world, push a piece of iceberg into a crack on the floor, open a sinkhole to go inside, trigger 3 underwater chests to open a sunken ship, and then you can fight the boss. And if you thought it's only uphill from there, I pity you. Porcupuffer is one of the absurdly hardest bosses I've ever faced in a Mario game. I'm not even joking, alongside this game's version of Bowser, this is top 5. Why? Well, let's look at the details. You can't hurt the Porcupuffer normally, so you have to shoot Mario at the wooden barrels to summon Bob-Bombs. Shoot the Bob-Bombs exactly at the Porcupuffer to inflate it, and only then can you damage it with Mario. Did you catch all that? Good. because none of that is easy to do. Getting the first hit isn't too hard, but the second and third can be hell since the pipe barricading the exit will disappear after enough time has passed. Unless you have an extra pipe, your chances of staying in are very slim. With each hit, Porcupuffer will summon smaller puffers which can only be killed with the bombs, so they can absorb a hit to protect it. Adding on to that, you have to balance firing Mario and the bombs at the same time, so better not get confused or you'll accidentally slip Mario out of the ship. And yes, if you fall out and come back, you gotta do the whole thing all over again. Technically, you could say the Bowser fight is worse, but see, you only ever need to beat that boss once. The Porcupuffer, you gotta fight it twice to complete the game. Granted, the second time is easier if you can stock up on lightning bolts from the Toot and Koopa rematch beforehand, but given the clunky controls, it's still easy to screw it up and you get no second chances. This fight has no business being this hard, especially when the other 3 standard bosses are actually pretty okay in comparison. It's such a shame too. Had this game got its gameplay working as well as Metroid and Pokemon Spinballs, this could have been a fun boss. With all that said, this fight isn't number 1 because at least it's consistent with how frustrating it is. At least the game expects you to get good at the fight rather than taunt you with a vague solution to a fight that's made to be near impossible otherwise. You can probably tell where I'm going with this. Before we get to the worst of the worst, let's take a look at some of our dishonorable mentions. Toad, Mario Party 1. Capping off Minigame Island with the incredibly annoying Slot Car Derby. Have fun racing against a cheating AI. Grodus, Paper Mario 1000 Year Door. The leader of the X-Nauts has a surprisingly forgettable boss fight. Seriously, the Bowser Cammy duo left more of an impact. Top Mania, Mario Galaxy. Imagine having minions that are stronger than you by the virtue of having spikes on their heads. Fawful Express, Bowser's Inside Story. A creative boss brought down by soul-sucking mic controls. At least the remake fixed that. Paper PD Piranha, Paper Jam. How long do you expect me to run away from this thing? And now, it's time for the Bad Bowser Battles lightning round. Mario Sunshine. I get that you're on vacation, Bows, but please, get out of the bathtub when your nemesis comes by. Pinball Land, a gloriously painful test of your position and patience. Partners in Time, the Shrowser fight. You just can't let a big ol' alien princess get her climactic spotlight, can you? New Super Mario Bros. 2. He just waves his arms up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down and Sticker Star. While you can beat him with any thing sticker you can get, it's still too frustrating and unintuitive to be even remotely enjoyable. At least you get to kill Kirsty for a bit. Tower Power Pokey. Look, I don't care if people say there are technically worse bosses in Sticker Star. For me, this is what opened the floodgates for how atrocious this game can really get. Tower Power Pokey is a disgustingly durable boss whom the only way you can beat efficiently is by using a bad thing sticker. While you can beat the first boss just fine without his weakness, this one demands you come with it. And as usual of Kirsty's dumb ass, she won't tell you what the weakness is until you're really stumped. Come to this fight without the bat, you gotta exit the stadium and go all the way back to the underground maze to find and paperize it. Like, is this good progression? Are you really supposed to do compulsory backtracking just to beat a boss right after you just traverse its dungeon? You can put shortcuts all you want, that doesn't excuse terrible design. And if you still insist on fighting without the bat, you have to deal with a second boss whose HP is over thrice that of the first boss, as well as quadruple defense. You can't hit it with a hammer because it has spikes on its sides, so if you don't have enough jump stickers, you're just about screwed. Isn't the main thing with Pokies is that you can't jump on them so you have to attack them from the sides? That's been a thing not just in Paper Mario, but the main series as well. Even if you stock up on POW blocks and hop slippers, this fight will still take a grueling amount of time to finish. Especially since Tower Power Pokey will summon minions to guard it as long as its segments are up. Let me reiterate, the game taunts and trolls you for fighting a boss practically and not using a shortcut to trivialize the whole thing. You know the mere existence of a boss fight is to be a challenge, right? How is this a challenge, let alone a good one? This fight summarizes everything wrong with Sticker Star's terrible boss design. Either spend hours trying to beat a boss with a shit ton of HP, or look up a guide to find the boss's specific weakness and trivialize it in the name of aesthetics. No matter how bad future bosses get in Mario games, I just hope they will never again follow the footsteps of this stupid, oversized cactus. Thanks for watching, everyone. This has been a video idea that lingered in my mind for a while, and I'm glad I managed to put it together for the occasion. What do you guys think of my picks? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you all have a good day.